Here's Mr. Dan Pena.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome, Dan.
Thank you for having me.
Nice to have you back in the Netherlands. We have, of course, lots of questions. But to start with, what is your definition of a high-performance person?
Being all that you can be every day. 24/7, 365, being all you can be.
If we would like to improve the quality of our lives, personally and professionally, what would be your advice? What can we do? What is most important?
Well, the most important thing is self-esteem. The people that we read about, the people that we admire, the Elon Musks, the Steve Jobs, the Warren Buffetts, etc., all have one thing in common. They have extremely high self-esteem. And, of course, you've heard me say this before, self-esteem is built the first 7 or 8 years of life. And unfortunately, we're with our parents the first 7 or 8 years of life. Ergo, we don't have too much high self-esteem. But to build high self-esteem, and the way you build high self-esteem, if you're 25, 35, or 45, is to be around, surround yourself with other people that have high self-esteem. Show me your friends and I'll show you your future. And so you can reverse your childhood by who you associate with.
How do you do that?
Well, you find people that are where you want to be, but they're already there. You're 22 years old, you're 32, you're 41 years old, and there's a guy or a gal who's 45 years old who is where you want to be. They've accomplished a lot of things. If you're into, they're saving the world, they're using their money for good causes, go associate with those people. Be around those people. And they're easy to find, but they're not going to knock on your door. They're not going to come to your apartment or your flat and ask you, oh, can I help you? And again, the best tool I've ever seen, and it's like it was designed for this, is LinkedIn. It's the best social media tool there ever was for what we're discussing. And you can find these people. Now, just remember, everybody that's on LinkedIn, all the, 20 million or whatever people that are on LinkedIn are all there for one reason. They're there because they want to do business, they want to meet people. Unlike some of the other social medias like Facebook or Twitter or, and I don't even know the names of the others, but I mean LinkedIn, they're there for a common purpose. They have a common bond. They have a common goal. They want to expand their horizons, and it's a great tool.
But you say it's so easy?
No, it's not. No, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying that makes it easier, that tool. But there are other people that want to be all they can be. There are other people that want to expand their horizons. Gallup did a poll in 2016, worldwide, 87.6% of all the people on the planet, 87.6% of all the people on the planet are unhappy. I'm going to say it again because I know these are Dutchmen, right? 87, we'll just round it off. 87% of everybody that walks the face of the earth, 7.65 billion people, are unhappy.
So what went wrong?
Well, I mean,
where did it start?
Well, if you were born in Biafra, I mean, the odds are against you. But if you were born in the Netherlands, which a lot of you were, rightly or wrongly, you had a better chance, a better opportunity than the poor kid born in Biafra. Okay? What have you done with it, if anything? Most of you, I can just look. I wore my glasses. Normally, I like to be filmed without my glasses. But last time, I didn't wear my glasses, so I couldn't see your faces. I've got my glasses on now, so I can see your faces. You know what I'm getting at. You have not used the opportunities, whereas the people in the third, fourth, fifth world countries use those opportunities to be all they can be. And money's not everything in the world, but money's the only thing anybody keeps track of. And so you can use that money that you make, as the Gates are doing, in trying to save the earth, to save the world, and to do good. But it all starts, you have to be serious about it. Most of the people that are engaged in personal development, for example, aren't serious. They're just, it takes up 3 or 4 or 5 hours of their time a week. And so they're fiddle farting around and they're not taking it serious. If you want to take it serious, Michael is a successful mentee of mine. And you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for he putting on these kinds of events. But he got serious about it a number of years ago. And he's doing a lot of good. How many of you can say the same? How many of you can say that you're serious about it? How many of you can actually say that you're trying to be all you can be? Now, I won't insult you by asking you to raise your hand because you'll just lie. We all know what the real answer is, don't we? You're not. And so if you want to be all that you can be, and if you want to be a high-performance person, and you don't have to be, 98% of all the high-performance people on the planet are introverts. I'm going to say it again slow because they're Dutchmen, right? 98% of all the people on the planet that are high performance are introverts. Elon Musk, Warren Buffett, Bill Gates have something in common. They're introverts, just like you.
What means? Maybe we have to explain this more.
Okay. Introverts meaning that you don't say what you really feel. Introverts is you don't act as if you really wanted to show the person that you don't disagree with them. Introverts are when your parents were telling you shit when you were growing up, you just put your head down and kept your mouth shut. And that's why you're introverted now as adults. As you can plainly see, I wasn't raised that way. My father said, if you've got something in your mind, it should come out of your lips. If you've got something in your mind, it should come out your mouth, Dan. And God knows, I took it to heart, and I've lived that way all my life. At the TED Talk I gave a couple days ago, which Michael was there to talk to the kids, it was quite interesting when I told them that I've been talking like this since I was a teenager. I've been talking shit since I'm a teenager.
Which is some time ago.
Well, I'll be 74 in a couple months, so it is some time ago. But the point is that I had self-esteem. I didn't know till I got grown up and was an adult that everybody didn't have self-esteem. I didn't understand that. I didn't realize that everybody didn't have self-confidence. I didn't realize that everybody didn't have self-worth. Because the kids that I hung with all were like I was. Because their parents were gave them a good role model. Most of the people that come to people like Michael or any of the gurus out there, and I call him a guru, come to them because you were lacking something in your childhood. In my particular case, a lot of people come to me because I'm the alpha male father they never had. I asked the question a couple days ago, how many of you can raise your hand with this, how many of you have kids? Fuck, too bad. But anyway, you have kids, okay? Don't raise your hand now. How many of you would like to have your kids grow up just like your parents? You know the answer, don't you? Close to zero. Because they were shitty role models. Now, I'm not going to ask the second question. How many of you would like your kids to grow up and be like you? Allah forbid. God forbid. But being a high-performance person is a full-time job. Michael's known me over 20 years. I'm like this when I wake up in the morning to brush my teeth. I'm like this when I brush my teeth before I go to sleep. I'm like this 24/7, 365, and I've been like this for the better part of 50 years. I'm always like this. I'm always pushing the edge of the envelope. And that's why, I'm an overnight success. I've been doing this, I've been coaching 25 and a half years, but all of a sudden I'm popular as hell, but I've been doing this for 50 years. I have the same habits today as I had 50 years ago. The exact same habits. But they're just ingrained in me. They're ingrained in me. And for those of you that have never been around the high-performance people like I just alluded to, the Warren Buffetts, Elon Musk, God rest his soul, Steve Jobs, who I happen to have known, They were like this 24/7, 365. It wasn't an act. Now, I know Michael's like this all the time, but he and I both know people that are considered gurus, that they have a stage face and they have their real face. They don't walk their talk. And part of being a high-performance person is walking your talk. Walking your talk. And I know Michael does, otherwise I wouldn't come here and, and assist him. Because I get a lot of invitations from a lot of different people. And almost all of them I turn down because I know the guru isn't walking his talk. The guru is being phony. The guru is being disingenuous.
You're a grandfather now. You have a
Yes, I
grandson.
am. Thank you.
You showed me the picture 2 days ago. He's the future legend.
Correct.
How will you be as a granddad for him?
Hard.
It will be tough.
Yeah, I'm hard. I was hard on his father, and I'm going to be harder on him. Because I wish I could say with my hand on my heart, and this is where Michael and I, our philosophies vary. If love got the job done, you wouldn't need podcasts, you wouldn't need seminars. It doesn't. Tough love gets the job done. And the people that I've just alluded to, those names, I was doing some research for my talk, and I looked up Heineken. Gerard Heineken, who was the founder of Heineken beer in 1864, he talked his rich mother. Heineken's come from a wealthy family even before the beer. He talked his mother into buying a brewery in 1864, which they then turned into Heineken. Gerard was a hard ass, tough as nails. Now, I didn't know him, I'm not that old, but I did know Freddie Heineken, the old man, and he was hard ball buster. Now, I don't know his daughter, the current CEO of Heineken, but I'm told she's a ball buster. I did know Steve Jobs. I do know Elon Musk. I do know Warren Buffett. I do know, and they're all ball busters. Success leaves clues, kids. I just named 5 of the greatest names in business in the last 150 years. And they all have one thing in common. They're ball busters. They're hard as fucking nails. Where does that leave you?
So is it a choice?
Correct.
To be tough.
Firm but fair.
What's the fair part? Because I can imagine that most people think you're so tough, so, courageous, but tough. I don't want to be like that.
No, most people don't.
I want to be liked.
Yeah, well, see, you want to fit in. I'm the only speaker that you're ever going to hear that really, with all his heart, doesn't give a shit. If I leave here you liking me, I did something wrong. I fucking did something wrong. I'm not here for you to like me. I'm here as a favor to Michael, my mentee, for 20 years. I'm not here, if you all died today, I don't give a shit. And I mean it. But Steve Jobs didn't give a shit about you either. Warren Buffett doesn't give a shit about you today. Elon Musk doesn't give a shit unless you're going to buy a Tesla car. Don't you understand? Don't you get it? You think Elon Musk wants to fit in? We know the answer is no, right? You want to fit in because you had poor role models at home. Most everybody in this room is a pleaser. You want to be liked? When I read about that people commit suicide because they were unliked on Facebook, it makes me sick to my stomach. How can the world get that fucked up that because of fucking Facebook, people are going to kill themselves? What have we come to? God almighty. Don't you see there's something fundamentally wrong with that? In that regard, the Chinese, they're banning Facebook. But 98% of the high-performance people are introverts. 98% of the high-performance people on the planet they want to be liked. 98%. We're talking, I'm at the cutting edge, the hard edge. He's not at the hard edge. He's someplace in the middle. But being liked doesn't get you a raise when you're working for whoever you're working for. Efficiency, accountability. Most people that come to seminars are there because they weren't held accountable when they were growing up. There used to be a saying when I was growing up, which is very politically incorrect now: spare the rod and spoil the child. The rod meaning beating, okay? Spare the rod, spoil the child. Now we have kids, and I'm sure many in the audience can attest to this, that have never been reprimanded, have never spanked by their parents, never been screamed at, never been slapped, never been in a schoolyard fight with another kid. And look at you. I mean, we have 2 tests on my website. All my stuff's free, by the way. One is called a snowflake test. 96.4% of the people that take the snowflake test fail. The first or second question on the test is, if someone spit in your mother's face, now I'm gonna say this real slow so that you're Dutch, I remember. If someone spit in your mama's face, Baldy, you in the front row right here, okay? What are the choices? There's 4 or 5 choices. The choice that's most clicked is I would try to ascertain, I would try to figure out where he was coming from and if he had a bad day. Now, what the fuck does that have to do with spitting in your mama's face? I would try to figure out if he had a bad day. Does that mean if he had a bad day, it's all right to spit in your mother's face? We have another test. It's called Super Success Test. 98.4% flunked that test because we decided to make a softer test. Okay, well, maybe the guys really believe that they shouldn't punch the guy's fucking, stab him in the eye with a knife for spitting on your mama. Okay, we'll do a new test. It's called the Super Success Test. So we ask softer questions, hoping, praying that the results are going to be better. Boy, never underestimate how wrong you can be, kids. So the softer test was based on what kind of sacrifices are you willing to be super successful? 60 hours a week. Nobody is willing to work 60 hours a week to be successful. Nobody's willing to miss an anniversary, wedding anniversary to be successful. Nobody is willing to miss a holiday. If you booked a holiday and something important happened in business, would you tell your family to go on the holiday without you? And you're not going to go. Nobody said yes. And it's got 27 questions or 26 questions, and they flunked that test worse than the other test because you're not willing to make any sacrifices to be high performance. I still work 50, 60, I don't consider it work. I still work 50, 60 hours a week. And I haven't had to work in 35 years. 35 years. But the world has changed. I mean, and the kids, and when I started giving all my product away for free about 10 years ago, and the reason I went from the highest priced product on the planet to 0, because I got so fucking tired of you crying, moaning, and whinging. Oh, it's too expensive, I can't afford it. So now I give it to you for free. I get 3 times more emails now. Man, there's so much shit here, I don't know where to start, what do I do? So then a year ago, we developed a new product, QLA for Dummies. It was called QLA for Retards, but we got in trouble with the Retardation Association. They're gonna sue me for using that word. So we pulled that out and we said just dummies. Dummy seems to be a politically correct, acceptable word, but not retard, okay? And, but the results are even worse because what you're saying is, okay, fine. I wasn't raised to go hit somebody if they spit in my mother's face, but I'm not willing to miss a holiday and stay in the office and work and let my family go without me. So the bottom line, you're not willing to do anything. You're not willing to sacrifice anything to be a high-performance person. I.e.?
It's all for free on your website. All
Correct.
the tests, all the information.
Everything's free.
The audiobook. is on. Can we buy the book still, the red one?
No, the first 100 million is audio for free. And then the book that I think is better than that is the $50 billion ebook, which is also free. There's 16.8 gigs of free material. Everything that I've ever produced is free. Because I wanted to take the last excuse from that guy and that guy and that gal why you didn't do it. So I give it to you. I certainly don't need the money. I only charge, as I was telling you the other night at dinner, I used to give seminars at the airport, 1,000 people, for free in the 90s. Absolutely 100% free. And I fed them lunch. And we had cocktails afterwards. And we'd get these nasty notes. I didn't like the lunch. The chicken was cold. You try to feed 1,000 people, the chicken's gonna be cold. I didn't like the bartender didn't pour enough whiskey in my drink. This is free. And then the coup de grace, and when I stopped doing that, they wanted me to pay for parking when they came to the free seminar. So I stopped doing that.
Sometimes you sound like a tough boy, like hell. But
I am.
But you care about the world because otherwise you wouldn't do what
right,
you do.
right. No, Michael's right. He's looking for my Achilles heel, my chink in my armor. I don't care about saving the world, but I want you to be able to save the world. That's true. That's true. And we've created now up to $775 billion with meatheads just like, well, maybe not, there's not too many Dutch on that list, but meatheads just like you, $775 billion in the last 25 and a half years. And a lot of the guys and gals are trying to save the world. I mean, they're just, but I tell you, think of a product or a service that changes 1 billion lives, i.e. Facebook, and you will, by definition, become extremely wealthy, and you can go and take that money and the followers that you'll have to go enhance the world in whatever manner you see fit. Our only benchmark is as long as it's legal, moral, and ethical. Anything goes. Now, depending on where you are in the world, the moral and ethical can swing in the wind because everybody's ethics is not the same as somebody else's ethics, and everybody's morality is not the same as everybody else. But where you go, and when you go to a place that has a rule of law, legal is legal. And so, but we've got a lot of people that are utilizing the QLA methodology all over the planet. There are some places in the world, as I've told Michael, where it's harder, okay. Some of the African continent is harder because of the corruption. Russia is harder because of corruption. Not impossible, but harder. But if you're in a major country that has a rule of law, QLA is easy. Easier than any other game in town. And the whole system is based on no money because I started with no money, and the kids that have created these 775 billion, with one or two exceptions, have started with no money. And it's quite remarkable. And right now, hate him or love him, President Trump has changed the world forever. President Trump has changed the financial fabric of this planet forevermore. Full disclosure, I knew the president 25 years ago. I haven't talked to him in 25 years. But he has changed the financial fabric of this world forever.
So what did he change?
He changed the lowest interest rates in 5,000 years. They're giving away money at ING Bank, literally. What are you going to tell your kids and grandkids 20 years from now when your grandson that's yet to be born comes up and says, "Granddad, what did you do during the greatest transformation of wealth in the history of the planet?" And you know what you're going to say? I wish I could speak Dutch now so I could say it in Dutch. I sat with my thumb up my fucking ass and did nothing.
They understand.
They know enough English, they got that.
They understand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, what are you going to tell them? Right now, the energy in all across the board in the world is so upbeat. And when President Trump wins again, and I was one of the first that predicted he was going to win before he decided to run, he's going to win in a landslide. The Democrats are handing it to him on a silver platter. He's changing the world. Because, and what he's doing with the Russians, or not, excuse me, with the Chinese have been screwing over the world with the tariffs and stealing intellectual property, et cetera, for 40, 50 years. He is now taking them to task, as somebody else should have. Obama should have, Bush should have, Clinton should have, and then Bush again should have, and whoever came up after, they should have done, but they didn't, because there's collateral damage. And right now, the farmers in America are getting hurt. Some of the farmers in the EU are getting hurt because of these tariffs, but it's got to be done. It's got to be done. Otherwise, the leading country on this planet is going to be a communistic country, not a free country. And you'll wish somebody had done it. But he's changed the world. He just has. And it's quite remarkable to see, because I have mentees, students, devotees, whatever you want to call them, all over the planet. The stories that I get back, it's incredible, the good that they're doing. I have many here in the Netherlands that are just, in America they'd say crushing it, they're just doing significantly well. They're rolling up various industries, starting with no money, and it's all on my site. It's all for free. The methodology, the same methodology he's used a couple times when he's brought himself back from financial death, which he shared with you. It's not a secret, otherwise I wouldn't mention it. It's not a secret, but he's used it a couple times himself, and it's all very doable. But you got to want to do more than just talk about it. And getting back to your initial question, being high performance is to take it seriously. And for those of you that are in young, late teens, early 20s, mid-20s, you can do this process 5, 6, 7, 8 times. For those of you in your 40s, you can do it 2 or 3 times. For those of you in your 50s or 60s, you can do it once or twice. But we are creating generational wealth, which would normally take 20 to 25 years, which is the definition of a generation, in 3 to 7 years. 3 years if you do everything perfect, 7 years if you do everything wrong. And most people, they average about 5 years.
Let's go back in time before we go to QLA and explain QLA a little bit more. You had a company.
Correct.
Built it from $820.
Correct.
And took it public for $450 million.
Correct.
That was when?
1984.
Okay. Then after you start coaching?
I got thrown out by the shareholders. And in 1993, I gave my first seminar in Los Angeles. And I've been coaching ever since. But this century, I've only given, last 20 years, I've only given the seminar at the castle. I went from giving them, by the way, the first seminars I gave were all free. I gave everything free because I didn't need the money. But I had no accountability. Let's say I take this table right here, and I train you for free. Some of you are going to go learn how to play golf better. Some of you, there's no accountability. That's why I don't like a charitable organization, because it's hard to keep people accountable that work for a charity. I mean, they're doing it for free, right? So I went from free to high-priced to only at the castle, where I hold them accountable.
And then you started coaching. Why didn't you start another company?
Because first of all, it sounds strange in hindsight. I found making $450 million easy. Easy. And I wanted to do something more with my life. And so when I got into the financial coaching, I wanted to change the fabric of financial coaching, which I have. And I wanted to be known as and now that's what they call me, the greatest of all time. But this was just me flapping my mouth 25 years ago. Now I am the greatest of all time, vis-a-vis creating wealth through people like yourselves. And I wanted to leave that legacy. And I wanted people, like I'm from the barrio, I'm a real rough background, been in jail 5 times, did a lot of ugly things, which I don't recommend to anybody. But I'm glad it happened to me because I know what the other side, like some of you have never been, kicked in the teeth. I know what it is to be kicked in the teeth and my teeth be on the pavement. I know what that feels like. I know the humiliation. Forget the pain. You get over the pain. And I wanted the poor kids to understand that they had a methodology. There was a methodology used by one of them, and I'm considered for poor, although it's hard pressed for me to say how they don't believe that I'm poor now. But I mean, that was once poor and got in a lot of trouble. You can do it if you want to do it bad enough. The operative part of that little description is if you want it bad enough. Muhammad Ali, which used to be Cassius Clay, the great fighter, arguably one of the greatest fighters ever, he was talking shit since he's 14, 15 years old. I'm the greatest. Before he ever had a professional fight. In athletics, it's more accepted to talk shit. Okay? You've been trained, keep your head down, don't embarrass yourself, don't embarrass the family, don't say things that may not happen. And I do just the opposite. I tell you to set goals beyond your lifetime. I tell you to set goals as soon as humanly possible. When kids come to me, they want to make 1 million, 10 million, and then when they've made 100 million, they say, Mr. Pena, we would have never, ever dreamt that we could create 100 million until we met you. You will never exceed your highest expectation. You will never exceed your highest, craziest thought. Never. That's a guarantee. And so then why, other than you've been taught by your parents in conventional wisdom, to set low goals? They've told you, the theory is you set low goals so then you can stair-step achievement and you won't be as disappointed when you fail. That's the theory. But normally the person or the persons that have proposed that theory are poor. And but QLA's there.
Most people who come to the castle pay about 16,000 euros. It's about in euros. That's a lot of money for most people. Are they poor? How do they get the money to go to the castle? And why they do
Well,
it?
the castle is sold out for a year, so don't bother going to the bank and going borrowing any money. Please, don't bother my office. I'm not here to sell you a castle, believe me. But they fall into 3 categories, the kids that come to the castle. And I call you all kids because I'm either old enough to be your father or grandfather, okay? Now, in an audience I was a couple days ago, there were actually 2 guys my age. So, and one couldn't hear, and he was trying to go like this, But he says, I can hear you, Mr. Pena. Well, that's good because it's very seldom that somebody in the audience can't hear me. So they fall into 3 categories. 10 years ago, my demographics were between 40 and 55, meaning the people that came were interested in me. 10 years later, my demographics are 15 to 35. 15 to 35. Now, the people that come, a third of them don't have a pot to piss in nor a window to throw it out of. They don't have 2 euros to rub together. They don't have 2 euros. They've either taken a mortgage out on their house, and in the United States, they can even get student loans, which I don't understand that exactly. But I mean, they get student loans. And of that third, half are still in school, living at home. Okay. The next third have businesses that really aren't real businesses. All they are is they've produced a job for themselves, a job for their wife, a job for their, their cousins. They're doing between 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 euros a year in business and maybe 2 million euros in business. They've got a business that barely gets along. A third of them have been reasonably successful vis-a-vis conventional wisdom. They've got businesses 5, 10, 15, 20 million. We've had some people that actually had some serious money. So those third. But that's no representation of who's successful. Because the third that already have money figure out this is too much fucking work. Okay? The third that's in between, life has a way of catching up. Their mother is dying of cancer. And I'm not saying this because it's funny. Their 9-year-old daughter gets pregnant. 9. And their whole life, you have a 9-year-old daughter that gets pregnant and you keep her, your whole life changes. I've seen it with my own eyes. Okay? And the third, the kids have less baggage. We have kids, the only asset they have is a 15-speed bicycle, which kind of puts the same category you're in. A 15-speed bicycle. For those of you that have done any research at all, on my website, we have teenage multimillionaires flying around in their own jet planes. Teenage multimillionaires flying around in their own jet planes. They understand that?
I think they do.
Okay. You should be embarrassed. Teenage multimillionaires flying around in their own jet plane. And he's the one that had the 15-speed bicycle. That's why I use it a lot. He's not a teenager anymore. He's 21. If he were standing right here, Josh Kim. He's half Korean, half Caucasian. But the one thing that they all have in common is they're fucking hungry. Hungry for a better life. Hungry for change. Hungry for the tough love their parents didn't give them.
So is that what it needs? You have to be hungry. You need to feel the pain.
Growth only comes through pain. I don't. You probably don't have any athletes in the audience. But anyway, for those that have read about being an athlete, okay, no pain, no gain. It's the same in life. Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, Dan Pena, Ted Turner, amongst a whole bunch of others, all had one thing in common. We all slept in our office the first 5 or 10 years of our business life. Slept in our office the first 5 or 10 years of our business life.
I think we would like to know, how does it work? The QLA principle.
Okay.
The basics. What can you teach
There's only one moving part to the QLA model.
How does it work?
Okay, I'm going to tell you right now. There's only one moving part. If it was a two-moving part, I couldn't explain it to the Dutch guys. But since it's only got one moving part, I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt that you can get this. Motivated seller. Now, I know it's not politically correct to talk about having sex with 1,000 partners anymore. But rock stars got nothing on Dan Pena. I got more ass than a toilet seat at a fucking bus station. And I was proud of it. How? Because I asked. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. And you've been taught all your life not to ask. To politically fit in. So the one moving part is a motivated seller. Now let's say that this table are all in IT. This table is in manufacturing. This table is in medical services. And this table is in construction. Of these 5 tables, or 5 industries I just mentioned, you're looking for a seller that is between 55 and 70. He has no line of succession, meaning he has nobody to leave the business to. Because most children today don't want to have anything to do with their parents' business. There's no succession planning. So there's got a guy, 68 years old, he's been in the business 35 years, he's built up a construction company to 5 million euros a year. He makes let's make it even numbers, €1 million a year out of 5 million, which would be a great business, that'd be 20%. What's he gonna do when he drops dead? He's gonna drop dead, right? And who's he gonna leave the business to? The hag he calls his wife. And what is she going to do with the business? Fuck all nothing. She's hoping she dies before him, so she doesn't have to be stuck with the business. Why don't the owners plan for death? Because nobody wants to talk about it. Why don't owners have a succession plan, meaning when I die, this is what's going to happen to the business? Because they don't want to talk about it. It's one of the things you don't talk about. It's the only thing I talk about. Okay, so you got a motivated seller. He's got a construction company, 5 million euros a year revenue, total revenue. He makes 1 million after tax. That is your prospect. That is the person you call on. And on the site, we show you how to call on these people, how to find them. How to find them. And 7 or 8 times out of 10, you can finance the entire transaction with no equity. You can finance the entire transaction with commercial debt, or as you say in this country, debt. Commercial debt. Meaning you don't have to have any fucking money. Now, Nyeroda, which I had the privilege of teaching at back in the 90s, Erasmus, which I had the privilege of teaching at back in the 90s, and the University of Amsterdam, which I had the privilege of teaching at back in the 90s, I used to ask the question, how many classes have you had in buying a business? Nobody raised their hand. How many classes have you had in selling a business? Nobody raised their hand. How many classes have you had in leadership? Nobody raised their hand. Now, I'm here to tell, because I checked last week, those 3 fine universities still don't have any classes in those 3 subjects. So they're not teaching you how to sell your business. They're not teaching you how to buy a business. Arguably, they only teach you how to run a business. So we have a motivated seller that has not had any succession plan, and that wants out, and that they will look at you with tears in their eyes, rolling down their cheeks. You're their savior. Because otherwise, they're going to die. And most of the owners that I just described in those 5 industries are going to die intestate. That means without a will. Why don't they have a will? For the same reason I just said, because they don't want to talk about dying. So what happens when John dies and leaves Mary his business without a will? It goes into probate, or whatever the equivalent there is in this country, which means it's in limbo. And it's going to be there between 6 and 36 months. But you step in like a knight on a white charging horse to save them. And that's the methodology we use. And this methodology has been around about 140 years. And the first person to think of this, and it wasn't Dan Pena, Andrew Carnegie, the wee Scot, arguably the first really wealthy guy on the planet, who happens to coincidentally come from right down the road from where I live in Scotland. That's what QLA is. It shows you how to go in and buy the businesses for little or no money out of your own pocket and using commercial debt. And what Trump has done to assist you, even though you may not like him, is because now interest rates are at the lowest in 5,000 years. And I hear they're going to go lower in America. And when America sneezes, Holland catches a cold. So if interest rates go lower in America, what do you think is going to happen here? Interest rates are going to go lower. And that's what the QLA is, and it's a simple process. And he followed QLA. This is his 3rd time around. But he bought businesses with no money, right? Right? I mean, he did it. And it doesn't, you know, it's nothing really hard. Now, why doesn't ING Bank tell you this? Why doesn't Rabo tell you this? And whatever the other Dutch banks are, right? Because this methodology I just described to you has little or no fees. I'm going to repeat myself. Little or no fees. There's no investment banking fee. There's no management fee. There's no succession fee. Because you're using commercial debt. And that's why they don't tell you.
But then, is it still that easy as it was 20 years ago?
Yes.
You go to the
it's
bank.
Easier now because there's more money on the street.
But you go to the bank and you say, then, I want to have your money.
Well, no. You don't. No, you borrow. You're going to borrow the money. Just like you did.
Yeah, but that was 20 years ago, other time. And what I did what he told me, and I didn't know better. So I went in, ING Bank, I asked for $500,000 and went out with the money. Because you told me you're not going to leave without the money.
You don't leave without the money or a check or a wire transfer. You sit there and until they're embarrassed. You go in when the fucking bank opens up, 9 o'clock you open, 10, and you don't leave the goddamn place until you got money in your pocket. I mean, literally. Now, see, most of you wouldn't do that because you'd be embarrassed.
And it's still that it's better to go to a new bank?
Oh, yeah.
A new
now,
office?
when a new ING branch opens up in wherever, okay, there's 3 things that you know for sure. Number 1, they've done a lot of marketing surveys that they need a branch there. Number 2, the bank branch has a lot of money, ING Bank. And number 3, they have no customers. That new branch does not have one customer when it opens up the first day on a Monday morning. Except for you, because you're going to be the first one in the door. I used to go around in my limousine. I'd go from branch to branch to branch. Boss, wake up, we're here. And I go through the same bullshit, the same pitch, which are all on my site free. And I wouldn't leave without it. And we give you a script. What is your legal lending limit? What's your personal lending limit? The bank officer. You probably don't even know, if you've ever dealt with a bank, what the legal lending limit of the bank is. You probably don't even know what the banker's legal lending limit. And the banker will say, well, I can sign for $50,000. You personally can sign for $50,000. What a lucky day for the 2 of us. All I need is $49,500. What a lucky fucking day. And we have kids doing this in the Netherlands today.
So even since all the rules in the financial system has changed, you say it's still easy.
And the reason why it's easier, because from 20 years ago, there's probably 100 times more cash trying to get out of the bank doors into our pockets now than when you did it 20 years ago. For every dollar, for every euro you put in a bank, they lend out between 20 and 40 euros for every euro you put in, depending on the structure, depending on the balance sheet of the bank. So for every 1,000 euros you deposit, they can lend out between 20,000 and 40,000 euros. And when I was here teaching in the late 90s, I had a speech. It was called Holland is Not Heaven. And I was a member of the Amstel Club. I'm getting up and making a speech, and Mr. Heineken stood up and said, Mr. Pena, I don't mean to be rude or interrupt you, but could you speak about something else? And I said, well, Mr. Heineken, but why? He says, we all know that, but the Dutch don't like to face up to the truth. Can we talk about something else that's happier for us? And so then the then chairman of ING Bank stood up and said, well, Mr. Pena, let's talk about prostitution. We all understand that. And so, and I didn't know much about prostitution, at least the way it is legalized here. And so I talked another 10 or 15 minutes, and then we retired to the bar and we had drinks. But now the difference is there's so much more money. And from when you did it, the interest rates are probably 1/5 as high as they were when you took the money from the bank.
Why commercial debt and no private equity or venture capital?
Because when you take private equity and venture capital, they're going to want the lion's share of the ownership of the business. The famous story is when Steve Jobs and Wozniak started Apple, they got an investment of $91,000 from a guy named Marcellus. He took 1/3 of the equity, and Wozniak and Jobs took 1/3 each. Now, that $90,000, they take 90% and leave 10% to the founders or the owners. But it's too easy. It's too easy. And when you know that the banks, 75% of all bank loans on the planet are made the last 90 days of the calendar year. I'm going to say it again. 75% of all bank loans made in the world are made the last 90 days of the year. Why? Because they want to get the money out the door so they can pay Christmas bonuses. Now that's a pretty shitty reason But if the bankers were fucking smart, they wouldn't be fucking bankers, would they? I'm going to say it again slow because you're Dutch. 75% of all money loans in the entire world are made the last 90 days of the calendar year. For that very reason.
So back to the beginning. You find a motivated seller.
Amen.
Or more. Is everyone motivated? Because
No.
sometimes you want to buy another business. And he's not motivated, and you want to have it.
Well, then, you can do a joint venture. A joint venture by accounting standards is a 50-50. Joint ventures are not 80-20 or 70-30, they're 50-50. Because he may not be motivated today, but let's say he's only 57 and he wants to retire when he's 65. You buy 50% of his business, you're his 50% partner for the next 6 or 7 years, and then you buy the next 50% at the end of that 6 or 7 years. But 9 times out of 10, they won't last till they're 65. When they see that they've turned over the reins, so to speak, and they've turned over the leadership, and they've turned over the controls, and you really know what you're doing, then they'll probably last 2 or 3 years and they'll run out. But nobody wants to, unless you're having sex, nobody wants to die in the saddle. I mean, you don't. You want to die and go to where you live in the sun and sail your boat around. And so it's not that hard. But they're not going to call you. So if you're waiting for the motivated sellers to knock on your door, which most of you will, not just this group, any group I speak before, they're not going to knock on your door. Just that doesn't happen.
What are the tough times in the QLA process with the mentees you've had in the past 25 years? What are the common mistakes?
Common mistakes is they skip the steps. We list the 7 steps on the site. They go from step 1 to you've got an uncle who's a lawyer, you've got a cousin who's a banker, and you've got a brother-in-law who's an accountant. Almost everybody in this room has somebody they know that's either a banker, an accountant, and or a lawyer, right? And you go to them. This system is based on doing business with people you don't know. Why don't you want to know them? Because familiarity breeds contempt. Familiarity breeds contempt. Because now you're happy slappy, you're going out to lunch, you're going out to dinner, your kids are taking tennis lessons together, and now it's hard for you to end the business relationship when it doesn't make sense for you anymore. These are new, fresh faces that you found on LinkedIn. Now, for those of you, some of you went to a school that is worth talking about. Your alumni associations. Some of you are parts of professions, accountants, lawyers, doctors, etc., that have national associations. But LinkedIn is the easiest, the fastest, and there's a premier LinkedIn. I think it costs 100 euros a month. Use the premier LinkedIn, where you're not limited to how many people you can contact. And it's
That's the dream team.
For the dream team, for your accountants, and for your lawyers, for everybody. All your professional associations can be derived on LinkedIn. It's a great tool. I wish that I had invested in it when it came out 15 years ago. It's just a terrific tool. Because by definition, everybody that is on there is looking to do some sort of business. And a lot of times they fudge and they say they're interested in charitable associations. They're interested in pro bono, meaning for free. That's not necessarily true. They're there to try to make money. They're there to try to make money. And all this stuff is on my site. In my book, audio version, which I don't see why everybody doesn't listen to it, spells it out, other than it's in my voice, and I scream sometimes in the audio version. Other than that, I've had people call the office and say they pissed themselves because I yelled at them and Kim will say, Mr. Pena wasn't in Bulgaria, how could he yell at you? He says, well, he yelled at the audio, on the audio book. Are you kidding me? Jesus.
Can you specify a little bit more about the dream team? What is the dream team? What is it needed for?
The dream team is, many of you haven't gone out and ventured into business because you think you don't have enough experience. And therefore, if you don't have enough experience, somebody's going to take advantage of you. That's true. But we've built the concept of the dream team that is built around you. You get a chairman, a CFO, a CEO, industry experts, and you have 6 or 7 people that are on that team. You're not paying them any money. They are getting free founders' equity. They're getting free ownership in the company upon exit. And they're extremely interested. Now, in the old days, you work 40 years at ING Bank and you might get a watch. Those days are dead. Now, you get nothing. You probably get a pension plan. Oh, by the way, another statistic Gallup poll just came up. Remember, I told you 87% of the people are not happy. Half of the people will run out of money before they run out of time, meaning their retirement savings, their retirement plans will be dissipated, drawn down to zero before they die. Half of the people. Okay. Another statistic that keeps a lot of people from doing what I've suggested is 90%, up to 90% of all business startups fail the first year. Up to 90% of all business startups. So, if it almost sounds when you read those things that the odds are against you. Well, no, I look at it just the opposite. I look that means that most of you aren't going to try. Not you, but I mean most of the audiences I speak to won't try. So that means the opportunities that are there are going to be more for me. And especially now, even though I've been pounding on my chest for 3 or 4 years that the lowest interest rates in 5,000 years, if you go to the bank, ING Bank, call up the bank manager and ask him, when was the last time interest rates were this low? He can't tell you. Probably in his career of 25 years of banking, they haven't been this low.
So how can it be if entrepreneurs go to the bank and won't get the money? What are the reasons?
It's a numbers game. For those of you that I'm going to say it as a guy, because I can't relate to this as a woman. A guy, there's 20 pretty girls. Okay, the first one that you asked out on a date, or can I buy you a drink? Do guys still buy drinks for girls at bars? Yeah? Okay. We haven't sunk that low yet, okay? So the first one may not want you to buy her a drink, right? The way some of you look, I can't see, you'd have to pay them money to buy you a drink, buy them a drink. By the way, you only have 2 times to make a first impression. First is how you look. Second is when you open your big fucking mouth. Most of you won't ask the girl if you can buy them a drink because you get nervous. You step on your dick. It's a numbers game. There are, last time I counted, there's about 300 banks in the Netherlands. 315, I think. I used to ask, how many have made a presentation to a banker today? This week? This month? This year? Ever? 4 hands went up. 5 hands. That's about right. 5 out of 250 people, that's about right. So how can you tell me this doesn't work? Because you've been scared by other pundits or things that you read about or things that you listen to on the news, not to do it. And even though and you go on the website and you can see all these kids that are not 15, they look 15, but they're 25, that are getting money just as he did 20 years ago. And it's easier than it was then because there's, number one, interest rates are significantly lower than when he did it. And number two, there's about 100 times more money in the banks than trying to push out the door than when he did it. He did it at a hard time. Interest rates were high. And the financial constraints, or the lack of financial constraints, let me back up. Another thing that keeps people from doing it is the crash of 2008, 2009, 2010. You've all read about that, heard about it, right? That's all horse shit. It happened, but it's not happening now. That's like saying for you, those of you that are old enough to have grandparents from the Depression, it happened, but it's not happening now. For those of you that have grandparents that fought in the war, you know, against the Nazis, it happened, but it's not happening now. So you're being deluded, scared, into not taking action. Most of you have been taught taking action is listening to a podcast. Taking action is reading a book. Taking action is taking a course online. No. Taking action is pulling the fucking trigger. You know, I say in 4 words what most people say in a book. Just fucking do it. That's taking action. You don't get the third pretty girl to say yes to buy her a drink unless you ask her, right?
So how do you foresee the financial future? 5, 10 years from now?
Oh, I thought you were going to say, oh. Well, the world, I don't have much faith in the world. The world is irreversible. We're fucked. I mean, we're fucked. But for the next 50 years, I mean, I make hay while the sun shines. Until the next, we're in the 11th month past the longest bull market in recorded history on the planet. Bull market, economics cycle, stock markets, okay? We're in the 11th month past the old world record. We got Trump coming in again, in my judgment, and he's going to extend that bull market. And he's very stock market oriented. He's very interest rate oriented. Some people say he's too stock market oriented. Some people say he's too interest rate oriented. But that's all good for us. For the next 5 years, to coincide, actually I believe 6 years, to coincide with my 80th birthday in 6 years, it's easy peasy, as our daughter used to say 20 years ago when she was a little girl. And in some countries, like this country, it's easier because the only problem the Netherlands has is a lack of work ethic. They're lazy. They're just flat fucking lazy.
And slow.
Well, I think they're lazy because they're slow. Because they don't want to intellectually engage with somebody like me because I'll rip their head off and shit down their neck. I'm a genius. 2, I'm extremely quick. And I chop people like you up for fucking not even breakfast. That's what they're afraid of. But the bankers are slower than you. They're slower than you. And when you come in with a script that you took off my site for free, they're going to think you are fucking Warren Buffett.
And why don't people do it?
They don't do it because, number one, most people don't want to get out of their comfort zone. They're comfortable. And the Netherlands is a great place to be comfortable at, you know. I know. I mean, I've been here since the early, middle 90s. But see, I remember what Amsterdam and Rotterdam looked like in 1952 and 53. I was here then as well, as a little kid. Flat, bombed out. You could pick up Nazi war helmets in the rubble. Almost as, this is an exaggeration, but almost as flat as this stage. When I was here from beginning of 52 to the end of 53. During the Korean War, my dad was an army officer, and he was able to bring his dependents here. And we were stationed in France, but Berlin, I mean, most of Europe was flat. See, so I know what it looked like. I know what it looks like now. But the people that had the big, much more expanded comfort zones were your grandparents that fought the Germans. You know, and they had hard times. But, I mean, you haven't fought anybody except your waistline. And most of you are losing that battle. You haven't done shit. You know, what do you want your legacy to be? Some of you don't even want to talk. It's another thing you don't want to talk about. What's your legacy going to be? You know, when I tell students and groups, if I were you, anybody in the audience, and I could see a 17-year-old kid, multimillionaire, flying in his fucking jet plane, I'd be embarrassed. Teenager, no education, homeschooled, one of 10 kids, in a fucking... How can you... I don't care how you justify. I don't care what bullshit you can tell yourself. You can't bullshit yourself enough to overcome a fucking teenage multimillionaire in his own fucking jet. You can lie to yourself from now until Christmas, and you can't bullshit yourself over that. And that's only one kid. I got a jillion of them. What are you going to do? Now, I say this metaphorically because my lawyers say I can't do it anymore. Most of you ought to just take a fucking thing, boom, blow the top of your fucking heads off, and then let Michael pray for you. What are you going to do? Josh Kim has a cult following of 1 million people following him. When he walks around, he lives in a penthouse in Las Vegas. He races his $2 million race car on the weekends. He just turned 21. Other than jerking off, what were you doing between 17 and 21, guys?
What did he do?
He rolled up home-assisted health care. Okay, in America, they want you to get you out of the hospital as soon as possible now. They don't want you to stay more than a few hours or a day or two after surgery, okay? And so they can, home-assisted is you go home and the nurse comes to you or the physio comes to you and he's rolling those up. He has 2 offices, one in Chicago, one in Las Vegas, and the big margin business. And there's a lot of people that have started those businesses 20, 30, even 40 years ago that have no exit. Healthcare is hot all through Europe, but the hottest of hot is cybersecurity and artificial intelligence. That is sizzling hot. Every time Trump rattles his sword, cybersecurity, and like some cybersecurity guys just stole 40 million in Bitcoin. It's hot. And some of the kids that got into cybersecurity at the beginning of the cycle, 25, 30 years ago, when it really started, are now tired, old. Not old by my standards, but they feel old, and they don't want the hassle anymore, so they went out. And the banks love to finance them. And 40%, between 40 and 60% of all cybersecurity contracts are with governments, either main governments, municipalities, state governments, school governments, and they're easier to finance because, by definition, almost all governments pay. In other words, will pay out the contract, and you won't have to worry about the risk of non-payment. And that's how I got started. I got started with a government contract 35 years ago, and it's still there.
What are other interesting industries?
Healthcare, internet, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence. I'm going to tell you everything except the ones I'm going to tell you to stay away from now. The list of staying away is much shorter than the list of doing. Retail, forget about it. Restaurants, forget about it. Bars, forget about it. Construction, forget about it because the margins are too thin. Virtually, you can take a yellow page. They don't have yellow page books anymore, do they? You could throw a yellow page on the ground and let the wind blow the pages. Stop there. That's how easy it is. That's how easy it is. I mean, virtually almost anything except those industries I just mentioned. In those industries, and when you think about it, which you probably don't, but when most of the big companies, General Motors is a roll-up consolidation play. Most of the airlines are roll-up consolidation plays. Consolidation meaning buying up smaller airlines to make a big airline. IBM, which used to be called International Business Machines, is a roll-up consolidation play. The banks, financial tech is huge, hot, financial technology, which is part of kind of an offshoot of cybersecurity. But artificial intelligence in 20, 30, 40, 50 years, the audience isn't going to be you. It's going to be cyborgs. I'm going to still be doing this 40, 50 years from now. So I'm looking forward to that because then I won't have to explain so much. But the one thing that, and there's a few guys around like me in the world, not many, to this day, they have not figured out, coders, how to write an algorithm for experience. So my 50 years of experience in thousands of transactions hasn't been able to be duplicated with an algorithm. I'm the only person out there that has done, with kids like you, deals in the millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, billions, tens of billions, and hundreds of billions. From teenage multimillionaires, which you're probably tired of hearing about Josh by now, to the largest transaction in recorded history, $500 billion, my mentees, Neom, the city of the future in Saudi Arabia. If anybody speaks Arabic in the audience, which is not likely, but if you speak Arabic or you're willing to learn Arabic, Monday, buy a one-way ticket to the kingdom, Saudi Arabia, never return. There's going to be at least 1 million billionaires made in Neom, the city of the next century. 1 million billionaires. Leave your wife, your children, your pregnant wife, leave. And just send them the money back. If you speak French, you go to Haiti. If you speak Portuguese, you go to Brazil. There's still places, but nobody in this fucking room is going to go to Brazil and learn Portuguese.
Opportunities.
Yes, sir.
Enough. We have a few more minutes left. I think we have to explain something more about the $50 billion man becomes the $775 billion man. And people don't understand because they ask me, did Dan made $775 billion himself? Told him no. Can you explain that?
I have kids, mentees, like him, that have created $775 billion since 1993 in transactions, buying and selling companies, taking companies public. Let's say this young man, this guy here, the light's shining off his bald head, he goes out and he follows QLA, and I get an email from him, which happens all the time. Dan, I just floated my company on the Bourse for 500 million euros on the Amsterdam Stock Exchange. And you're right, I didn't put up any money. That's 500 million. Well, I have 775 billion of those, and I have, a guy came to the seminar in 2004. I got a letter from him maybe 6 months ago, a certified bank statement signed by the chairman of the bank, HSBC Bank, verifying this young man had 841 million cash in the bank. So I assume he's made some other money, although we only count the 840. So all my numbers are verified either on the stock exchange, bank statements, certified net worth statements. 775. And we're going to cross the $1 trillion mark, not too in the distant future.
Do you invest in stocks or bitcoins or whatever?
No.
Why not?
Sally and I have been in cash for 20 years because I don't know how the other guys do it. If I have an investment portfolio, I'm going to worry about my investment portfolio before I'm worried about your business. So we got into cash about 20 years ago. We own no assets outside the castle. And I don't own the castle. A trust owns the castle. And because when I decided to coach in 1993, I decided to devote 100% of my time to you kids. And that's what we've done. Although Sally just bought some Berkshire Hathaway because we want to go to the annual, his stockholders' annual meeting. But we missed it this year. But we do own a little of that. We just bought that in the last year. But we have no investments. Everything's cash. None.
Why no bitcoins and why no cryptocurrency?
Well, bitcoins, I called the top of the market in December 2017 when it was $19,600. I said, if you have bitcoins, sell half, keep half. This is the top. Nobody listened to me. If you knew who was really behind Bitcoin, you would run as fast as you fucking could to sell it. I know. 100%. If you knew who owned Bitcoin or who started Bitcoin, and you had Bitcoin, you couldn't sleep at night. I know. 100%. And when the real founder of Bitcoin comes out, it is my humble opinion, and there's nothing humble about me, Bitcoin will go to fucking zero.
One day.
In a microsecond, whoop, like that.
Then last question. Again, you're the grandfather. You have this grandchild.
Correct.
What do you think about the world in 20, 25 years from now?
It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard.
What can we do to save it?
Get away from political correctness. I'll answer it in a different way. In 1986, the average handshake, a man's pound per pressure handshake, was 118 pounds. A woman's handshake was 96 pounds. Everybody understand what I'm saying? The pressure, when you shake hands? That was 1986. In 2016, the man's pressure has gone from 118 to 96, and the woman's has gone from 96 to 108. Women are acting like they had a pair, and men don't have a pair. And if that continues, the Greek philosopher said this, and amongst others, I don't see much of a future. But the sun is going to gobble up the earth in about between 7 and 11 billion years. Although I'm planning on living a long time, I'm not going to live quite that long. But just work hard. I don't know any other thing than hard work. And hard work is out of favor now. It just is. And I don't see any way around that. The only people that believe in hard work are people that, not the only, that's an exaggeration, but most of the people that still believe in hard work are people that I produced. And now, if I was sitting up here in a wheelchair like Hawkins, who's dead, God rest his soul, he and I were about the same age, by the way. But I'm not, am I? I'm 6'1", 225, a fucking twisted steel and panther piss. And I can take 10 snowflakes at a time and rip their fucking head off and shit down their neck. Maybe this group 20 at a time. But I'm a dying breed. I'm a Neanderthal. I understand that. I'm sad to say that because I know it's a sad commentary for the human race. But you're not going to, don't, the human race is still going to be here in 20 years. It's going to be, the Russians laugh at us. We're so weak. I mean, the free world. The Chinese laugh at us because we're so weak. Do you understand that? There's 3 economies on the planet, arguably. Chinese, Russia, and the free world. And 2 of the 3 laugh at us. Do you think they're delusional? I don't think so. And here in the Netherlands, you just smile about it. Not just here, in New York City, they smile about it too. But you can have anything you want in life as long as you work hard. And it's honest, legal, moral, and a Dutchman's morality is kind of a swinging bush. And a Dutchman's ethics is kind of a swinging, but as long as it's within the rule of law, I mean, and I have a lot of successful, like Michael, Dutch people, but he's really Polish. Okay, so let's get that clear. He's really Polish. But I mean, kids, you can have whatever you want. Please go to my site, it's all free. And by the way, the same people tomorrow?
Tomorrow, same people.
Okay.
Then we have a surprise. Thank you, Mr. Pena.
Thank you very much. Have a good time.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay, there you go.